times.
Well, actually, I want to address that in just a minute, and we'll talk about that. That's what I actually want to address that here in just a second. Dave, is this a more secure link than the Zoom?
It's still Zoom, and it's as secure as it was last week. But the difference is that people can't be standing with a sign on video. But they can speak.
Hello?
Did-
Yeah. Thank you. It was playing that
Okay.
recording.
And then, Commissioner Larry, one other thing, that in hindsight from the last meeting, there were, as you know, there was a couple of times where something was happening that, you know, I mean, I was in the room here with Dave. I know that it wasn't, Dave who was administrating the meeting. And, where your microphone was muted, and then there was a time that we lost Commissioner, Ames. And so what I would like to do is stop the meeting until everybody is back on. I think last week we kept going and then we went back and took a vote for Commissioner Ames. In hindsight, that wasn't really the right thing to do. I think we should have just stopped the meeting completely until Commissioner Ames was back online. And I was going to have Terry sort of monitor. So if at any time you can't hear us or we can't hear you, we'll stop the meeting until that's corrected, okay?
Yeah, I guess I would just suggest that maybe just, obviously we can't require commissioners, but if they are planning on leaving the meeting, if we could, you know, politely ask that they would notify everybody, that would help us know that they are actually indeed out of the meeting, though I doubt that would happen or be necessary. Thank you.
I think that's the only thing with Zoom. There is some things with the, as far as input, but we'll take care of that after we do pledges and roll call. So let's all stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the
To the
flag
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All commissioners are present. So help me with the flow of the meeting. It's up to the commissioners. I want to ask if you would be willing to vote to suspend the rules and allow at item number 7 on comments from the public. If we open that instead of that being non-agenda items, if we suspend that rule and make that agenda item and non-agenda items so that people can talk about, you know, what they want to talk about. And then when we're discussing issues, it'll help the flow and the debate amongst the commissioners a little better. It's up to the board if they want to do that. It would take a majority vote to suspend those rules. I try not to make the motions. But it's you know, if that's not something you want to do, that's fine. I just, if I know ahead of time, it'll help me and how you know. Yeah.
I just to seem reasonable.
Okay.
I'm fine with it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Madam Chair, what is the purpose of this? Because you know, I think it's crucial for us to always solicit feedback, and our bylaws do allow and require the public to be able to speak to specific agenda items and non-agenda items. And what I don't want is kind of they've got to dump all their ideas right now. You know, we as a commission are able to make decisions in an informed way when we actually hear from the public when we're talking about a specific issue. We have some discussion, we open that up to the public as required by the bylaws, and then that allows us to actually make some amendments if necessary and actually respond to that right then versus trying to remember what somebody said later. I think it's much better to make sure we allow them to speak during those specific items.
Any other comments or discussion
I guess I'd rather have them speak for each item.
for each item? Okay.
Yeah, either way is fine, but I think I lean that way.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. One of the, my thoughts is, well, what other communities do with a similar situation. It would be, I think, for a legislative body who represents as many people as we do, I think you'd be hard pressed to find them allowing individuals to speak to everything on the agenda. Like the city of Lewiston, it's really mostly one moment, and you get a couple minutes to speak about it. And you're available to make your public comment to your counselor or to them by writing, and you can speak then in that specific time about whatever's on the agenda. But it depends on what the topic is, and so that's just saying that's what Lewiston does, and it seems to work well for them, and they get plenty of public comment in that one section like you've proposed.
Chair?
I would echo Commissioner Major's sentiment. I've seen that as well at town meetings and, city council meetings and so on and so forth. I think for the, sake of organization and time, I think it would be best to have the public, speak, in one, during one portion of the agenda, whatever they would, as opposed to throughout the meeting.
Sure. I absolutely echo, except maybe, if the, doesn't need to be spoken. As Commissioner Maduro said, depending on the item, if it's something where obviously you want to speak, the public speak edition, and the chair can open it up, or the board can request that.
And there are times when there are people that are attending our meetings because they have expertise in the field, and we want to draw, whether it be an engineer, we want to draw that discussion in. So, and this is, I'm asking to suspend the rule just for one meeting. We'll see how it goes. We can revisit it. I'm not asking for a permanent.
Madam Chair, I guess I'm just, you've allowed them to speak multiple times. It would be fair to allow me to speak multiple times as well, ma'am. So as you've allowed them to speak multiple times, that will be appropriate to allow me to speak as well. You have to be fair as chair. May I speak, Madam Chair?
Yes, I will stop and you can speak.
Yes, thank you, as precedent has been set for others. So my concern is, why now? We've gone through multiple sessions of the public being denied their right to be in person, being able to speak out, and we've ignored a plea to suspend the rules last time to enable the public to speak, and our bylaws actually allow the public to speak to any particular agenda item and any non-agenda item. So I'm a little puzzled as to why now, is there's been a trend over the past 2 or 3 meetings, basically shunting the public out. We voted on stuff under discussion items under commissioners only, even though that's not really an area that protects and who would ever want to protect people from being able to speak their piece about an issue. We voted on basically what the next meeting would be under discussion items, but that wasn't even the right location. That should have been under new business. And we voted and discussed and had to fight to allow the people to speak. This is a really strange trend, and this is not appropriate. And I'm puzzled as to why, after a little bit of publicity, all of a sudden it's now been decided unilaterally that the public would be kicked out of the meeting and only allowed via Zoom for the February 17th meeting. And that now the same sort of, what is going on here? There's no justification. And regardless of what Commissioner Madore has said, we are not bound by the city of Lewiston. We are bound by our own bylaws. And now we're trying to suspend our bylaws to not allow the public to speak during any particular agenda item and just push that all into one thing. This is not representative government. And this is very scary. And there's no reasonable justification for doing this. We are here to serve the public. We are not here to just serve staff. We have a charter requirement to allow the public to meet in person publicly. And much of that, including the bylaws, was ignored. And even the Maine Municipal Association guidance document that you sent us gave much protections for the public, but that was ignored as well. This is not the right thing for us to do. And it does not look good for us to be even suggesting this.
Just can we call the question and, unless there's other people that would like to weigh in. All we're really asking is to take away the rule of non-agenda to cover both agenda and non-agenda items during public comment. If that's not what the board wants to do, that's fine. It'll help me to know how to organize what we'd like to do in that. So,
Calling the question?
would you like to call the
Yeah,
question?
call the question.
So all of those that are in favor, let's be very clear on what we're voting.
Is it a vote to call the question or a vote to suspend the rules, Madam Chair? Because it was not seconded.
And you've interrupted, so I'm going to ask you not to interrupt anymore.
Point of order, Madam Chair. There's a one motion without a second. That is in,
Instructions right now, if you stop talking, you'll hear them. We are voting on whether to suspend the rules for one meeting only and include public comment on both non-agenda items and agenda items at the time of comments from the public. So a vote yes is to suspend that rule for one meeting. A vote no means you would not like to suspend that rule, and we will keep public comments as non-agenda items only. Okay, so all those in favor?
Madam Chair, that requires a roll call vote for the
And-
guidance you've cited.
Well, you're on Zoom, so I will take a roll call vote with you. Are you in favor or not in favor? I haven't asked those opposed. And then Commissioner Larry, if you would voice your vote, please.
I vote no, and I request the minutes to reflect that this is highly strange that we would do this at this time. And this is wrong for us to even consider keeping the public out, especially how they've been abused and threatened over the past 2 meetings. And this didn't even have, there was a call to the question. It didn't even have a second, Madam Chair, and you would not even consider that. That is procedural, Madam Chair. So instead of saying I'm interrupting, I may interrupt to correct a mistake, and that was a mistake.
I put the warrants in front of you. Okay, warrants, review and approval of all warrants.
I move to approve. What about the meetings?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, let's back that up, yes. Minutes from the February 17th regular meeting, a motion,
I move to approve the minutes for the meeting held February 17th, 2021.
second to that.
A second.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed?
Opposed? Point of order, Madam Chair. How many votes were in the affirmative for the suspension of rules? I did not hear that read.
To one. It was 6 votes to 1 vote.
Thank you.
And for the meeting minutes, 6 to 1 also. Let's move on to number 5, review and approval of all warrants.
Madam Chair, I move to approve warrants 2105, 2106, 2124J, 2125J, and corrections warrants 2124J, 2124J, and 2125.
Thank you. And a second? Thank you. And any discussion about the warrants? Either correction or regular warrants? Okay. Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay. And Maine County Commissioners Association.
Yes, thank you, Chair. There's nothing to report right now. There was not a meeting between your, last time and this time. I do expect to be a meeting soon. You know, one thing to note is that initially proposed I don't think this is exactly the case now, but I think it's a good enough time to bring it up since it is related to that. A while back, I had received an email from of a proposal on what the COVID relief package that the Biden administration, the House just passed, probably before the House passed it. And in that, it said that potentially we could receive a sizable amount of money. I don't really believe that it's gonna be anything close to that, but the way the House passed it, and I'm not a content expert on it exactly, but the way the House passed it currently is that there will be funding for municipalities in the state. And as for where the county falls into that, it's a bit of an unknown for me. I haven't read the details and I've heard from them about the specifics, but we could expect that potentially we may get some money from the state of Maine. Personally, I feel like maybe we should try to draft an argument as to why we should qualify to receive some of the relief payments. I think there's a lot of reasons why, including, us holding inmates that the state wouldn't accept and having non-payment on that or wherever that sits now, among other things. Because I was recently talking to the district attorney and it looks like the backlog is huge of cases. It's tremendous. And what he had said, and this might be, it's hard to figure out exactly how it's all going to play out, but what he said is it's going to take 3 years to correct this backlog. And so that kind of goes into partly why I talked about other things, but so there are compelling reasons and uses for this money to help with justice and all other things in Scranton County. So, if you guys have any thoughts about that? It's really kind of unknown how it's all going to play out, but it seems very clear that the state will get some money to be distributed to municipalities and other local governments.
Yeah, 3 years is sort of a,
Scary.
yeah.
Madam Chair, I had a question, as Commissioner Medora offered for questions. How many years have we had close to 70% pretrial inmates? He offered questions, so.
Yeah, are you finished with your, I want you to be able to finish with your report.
Yep, no, I'm open for questions and I'd like to discuss it more.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Larry.
How many years have we had pretrial population of inmates at a high percentage, close to 70%?
My guess has probably been decades.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So anyway, there's that. So, I don't know, I guess we should just kind of monitor what's going on in terms of, because we don't want to spend too much time working on that if there really isn't any money coming toward the counties. But I do expect the meeting in the near future.
Let me ask would that fall into what EMA director does, or would that fall into a different category?
It all depends on what money is available in what categories and so on. But she has been on top of all of the COVID stuff so far to this point. So she would certainly be one of the lead persons on that. Yeah.
I think the state has some wiggle room in terms of whether they get to counties or not. I think if the governor probably had her way, she probably wouldn't. That's why I'm kind of saying that I think that we should have a bit of an argument as to why we should, because I think it is compelling.
I guess you'd,
I think Commissioner Michael
I'll
was
yield
next,
to
and then
the,
Commissioner Victoria. Okay, go ahead.
So, I'm really good, but where does the Maine Commissioners Association, wouldn't they be advocating for all the counties, or am I not understanding why they're not there? I'm not saying that we don't need to write up and fight for this, but the whole idea behind that association, I'm assuming, is that they're looking out for us regarding laws being changed in Augusta, or
Well, I think it's been an unknown as it's specific. And the House just passed it the other day, because initially it said that the Democrats had proposed that the allocation was that we would receive $21 million. In perspective, our budget's like $15 million. So we're talking a large amount of money. I don't think we'll get anything close to that, or probably zero. But I'm saying and then right now they haven't talked about that. You know, we're advocating for that. Their focus has been on the legislature and the bills that are put forth. Because there's certainly plenty of bills being put forth that would impact the county. So, but there's not great leadership there. So that's the answer to the question. But I can bring it up. I'll certainly bring it up.
What's the look like? Is this thing front track bill, you think, or was that a month, or we have no idea?
Whatever the United States Senate does.
Perhaps you could call some of the other NCCA members, or for that matter, any commissioner in any other county, and feel it out, maybe get a, what about possibly doing a group kind of, maybe all the county commissions could vote and stick away on something, something like that could be done. Certainly, if you want any help on the groundwork, I'd be work for it.
Yeah, sure. I gotta, the chair of the association is gonna be calling me back very soon, so that'll be a good opportunity to talk to him about that.
Good job.
I have one question, but I don't want to interrupt you. If anyone has any more discussion about what you already. Usually by this time, MCCA puts out a list of bills for us to watch that are county related. Did I miss that in my email, or did they not put that out yet?
They have sent a list. They have like a tracker, and you can kind of see actively what they're doing. And I can try to get a hold of that, and I can distribute it pretty wide to everybody.
Yeah, I'll have to watch that. I thought if I missed it, I'd just write and get another one, but.
The whole process has been really peculiar at this, this legislature. You can imagine, like, they haven't actually had any legislative days yet, to my understanding. And so therefore, no, things have gone to committee, but nothing has been happening. They haven't done any hearings in the legislature. But they're going to be forced very soon to have to hold, a meeting at large, because they have a lot of appointments to do, among other things. For executive branch, so and they have not said exactly when or anything like that, so that would be interesting to see how it plays out. But one more thing, I'm sorry, the risk pool, not much to report there, but they did send out one of the things they did is they re-examined cyber insurance. So I can't tell you all the details of what that included, but that's something that they've been examining, and we do. Through them, we do have coverage of cyber insurance. So that's like, we have one of those softwares that criminals like to use. They lock everything down and they make you pay a ransomware. So that's one of them. That's the big one that's impacted people everywhere, or every municipality, businesses. And so they contracted with a group to do a cyber assessment, but it was high level. So we just received some report today, but it actually doesn't seem particularly relevant to us. But I think it'll be an interesting conversation and kind of follow up with it as our staff has time to see what's in there. That's it now.
Okay. Commissioner Kelly, what's the main report?
I don't have anything else.
Okay. And administrative report?
Okay, just very quickly, the EMA project that somebody has been working on should be finished sometime this month. This project brings the facility and operations more up to date, and it provides more pleasant working conditions. I gave approval, and the body scanner for the jail has been ordered. This will help in ensuring incoming inmates and visitors will not have contraband when they enter the jail. And new DOC jail standards requiring contact visits, etc., made this purchase much more urgent. And so we did it a little earlier than we otherwise probably would have, to make sure that we're up to date. The audit is still ongoing. The treasurer and the staff continue to move that office forward, and the audit should be finished sometime this end of this month. The staff will be starting budget process. I requested the 5-year plan updates, and I will have the budget scheduled for commissioners and budget committee to you soon for your approval. We have been dealing with various FOAA requests on various issues. As usual, I'm dealing with employee issues, approving training, hiring, reviewing evaluation, etc. We have finished the 2020 final budget books after the state evaluation and tax commitment has been finalized, and you have those. And we've done the latest update on the bylaws.
Thank you. Questions for the administrator?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Moore and then Commissioner Larry. Commissioner Bedore?
Thank you. I was curious if, so I think plenty of us were included with your email about the POA request. And so I was curious if you'd talk a little bit about that in a second, in terms of what the request we got, how you're handling it, that sort of thing. Because I know what my response to you and to everybody was about encouraging that we set up a system in that someone on the staff has the opportunity to, for a case-by-case situation, to go in to our information, our email addresses that are in the public domain, to access communications for reasons like this. I know a lot of communities do it that way, I say larger ones, who actually have the staff capacity for that. And so, I'd be happy to send whatever emails they have to you to help you, as I trust you and the person who's asking. But just curious, your thoughts on that and what you've been doing and what kind of requests we've received.
This particular request that you're referring to was for emails from county commissioners and so on. I responded by getting to all of you regarding your emails. You did get to me that, that's how others do it and so on. And I responded back that I understand that and we can do that. However, I was hesitant to, without notifying all of the commissioners, that, I didn't want to just be rummaging around in your emails without your approval. That particular request was withdrawn, and so it and that became irrelevant then at that point. Some of the other we've had other requests. One was the inmate phone contract. This was from another, actually from a paper. One was from for the inmate benefit account. And then, so there've been several other types of requests as well.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Larry?
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Administrator Post, the bylaws on the website, when you search for bylaws, still have the ancient bylaws that we have without any of the updates. I believe we've updated those for the ability to remove the chair, the ability to override the chair's decisions. But those are not amended or appended or added on to that, or even on a subsection of it, within the same document. Have those been added as well? Because those passed, what, November or something like that last year, I believe.
It has, and Sandy had me open them up today to find out whether it was working correctly on mine, and it was. You need to, and this is, do need to update our website, because what you need to do is refresh your page, and then it should come up. But we're still working on that, but,
Yeah.
it has been changed, it's just, is difficult, getting it to show, but hit refresh on your page.
Yeah, because I've tried, to find minutes before online and so on and so forth, and the same kind of thing half the time that won't even load. It shouldn't take that, because that's great that you can tell me that, but that's hard for the public to be able to pull up anything if they want. If they go there, they try it once, they don't bother the second time. And I think we've been mentioning about the need to deal with the website for a few years now. So I'm a little concerned that that's available for the public to actually see, because the bylaws and the charter are what govern how we operate as a commission and how we operate as a county, the charter at least. So, thank you.
Any other questions for the administrator?
I want to go back to the VOA thing. I don't know if this is the best time to talk about it, but I feel like it's probably okay. I'm not looking for any decisions or policies or whatever from the group. And I absolutely understand your hesitation on that. And I think that's definitely the right way to go, because we haven't made decisions on that. But, my perspective on the email is that I understood the moment that it had my name on it, that it's not really my email. Well, I have access to it. It's not really my email. It's Shannon County's email. So, going forward, I guess, does anyone feel like an individual on the staff, maybe it's not Larry, maybe it's Sandy or the IT director, does anyone feel like they ought to not be able to access it for freedom of information requests?
Emails that our names are on.
Our email address.
Our email.
Yeah.
Definitely, Commissioner Porter?
I mean, I have no objection to what, I agree, it belongs to the county, it says that in the documentation that we received. I'm kind of interested in how many, you mentioned that others, and I guess I'm wondering if, when you get those, if you could at least report to us who's requesting it about what, because I guess I'm trying to think, is there something that we should be aware of concerning the telephone contract or whatever if these people are looking at it, I, just listening, think I'd like to know that, because apparently that is the public reaching out to us in a more formal way, saying they have concerns. And rather than being blindsided, I think it would be nice to know ahead of time. That's just, and after hearing you say that tonight, I didn't even know that was happening.
One of the inmate benefit account and the inmate phone contract, one was a professor at a college who was doing some research on apparently jail stuff. One was that I just got and haven't responded to yet, was another newspaper where we have given information and they're just wanting to update that information. So there's two of them. Then the commissioner email regarding resolution. And then we've had some that had to do with the observation of firearm. And we had some requests for that. Although there wasn't anything that we had to give them, and we told them that 3 times, so.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Because by putting context in there, now that you tell me professor is working on a project, I'm not thinking, I'm not seeing it, at least at this point, as something that we have to maybe put on our agenda in a month from now or something.
Yeah, but what you're saying is, nobody wants to be blindsided.
Well,
I got you. I understand what you're saying. Absolutely.
Until he explained it, that it's a project or a paper that the professor is doing. I mean, it could lead to issues. I'm not saying, I don't know what he's gonna find out, he or she's gonna find out. But at least it's not something we're
Anyone else?
So, sorry, I take it that maybe there aren't objections to what I had said?
I don't.
Okay, awesome.
I just don't think this is even really appropriate. It's not even a discussion item or on the agenda. So let's discuss it later if we really, I wouldn't say there's no objections, but I think it would be better to not speak for us or use this as consensus one way or the other. I think a lot of the FOA requests would have never been necessary had we treated the public properly and appropriately for the past 2, now 3 meetings. I would like to ask, we voted to allow the public to meet, to allow the public to come here wearing masks, but I see no public here. And I remember them being threatened or told, frankly, by one commissioner, that they will be going through metal detectors. Is the public, has the public been allowed to come in if they wore a face mask or a face shield? And were they forced to undergo metal detectors? Because I think that's an important question, because they were told they would be, not by the chair, not by the vice chair, or by a vote of the board. So I guess I'd like to know, did they have to go through metal detectors, and have they been allowed into the building if they bowed the knee, sadly, and wore a face shield or face mask?
Okay, you're certainly, you were interrupted. I want you, FOA issues came up. You are completely within your rights to talk about FOA. I want you to feel free to finish what you were saying.
Yeah.
I didn't interrupt.
Yes, I wish you'd stop interrupting.
You need to follow the bylaws, Madam Chair. I didn't interrupt.
Yeah, you know what, the reason, partly why I wanted to talk about it, not during Larry's and yours, it's just, I just want to have a discussion about it. I feel like sometimes maybe we have difficulty, having conversations, and so, I know this is a task that he's working on, and he's our FOA officer, and, we have concerns, questions about sort of the process that I outlined, so I thought it was a good time to just kind of talk about it, because I think as a commission, we have to do more talking amongst ourselves about things, and I don't, whether it's, I don't always, see us making, decisions about something, but I think talking is very important for us to do that. So, thank you.
Mr. Ames.
Since you asked, I called Larry and gave him permission to go through the email, because I was under the impression that it was county email and they can do that whenever they want already anyway. I didn't think it was my email, so. Yeah, I agree with it.
Well, I'm surprised we're all on the same page. I like that, because my thought too is just, I want us to be able to follow the, being open, and I want us to be able to do that. And, I trust everyone here would, if they got asked by Larry to send us our communications, that, that we would. But, people have their biases and their opinions and maybe their own perspective on what's being asked. And so I just want to make sure that, we're following what's being asked. Thank you.
All right, Dave, are we ready to open up the webinar to public comment?
Yes, we have one lady requesting to speak right now, Gail.
Okay. Gail, go ahead.
Yes, hi. The discussion you're having regarding the firearms comment, I wanted to see whether there was any resolution regarding that, and so I guess I'm asking for discussion regarding Isaiah's comment that what are we going to be able to come in and do we have to go through metal detectors? And I just wanted to also mention that I specifically wrote to the Madam Chairwoman asking for clarification of this issue and expressing my objection to the speculative nature of the comment, which was later shown to be based on only observation, and that it appeared to me that it was it was a casting aspersions on those of us who had come to speak our concerns about masking policies. And I just wanted to know why an unsubstantiated allegation would be made and not addressed. I have not received any communication back from you, Madam Chairwoman, and this is upsetting to me, because if it was verified, that is one thing, but it was not verified, and it was later admitted by Commissioner Madore to be a speculative observation. And so I really do have a public interest in this, because I represent a lot of people who have concerns about masking. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, COVID protocols. And we have the updated COVID protocols. In your role, Chairman of the Safety Committee, did you have anything you wanted to say that hasn't been said and rehashed and re-talked about for?
No, I think we're collectively happy with the product as it stands now, and I think that it's important to understand that as the landscape changes, we'll readdress it. Thank you.
It's something we have been doing, and so this is just the board's approval of what actually is happening now. So
This has been discussed in quite some length. Anybody have any more comments that they would like to make about the protocol? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair,
I think second to tell Tom that I appreciated acknowledging me.
No.
Just making a simple statement. That's all I was looking for.
Happy to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Ray?
Madam Chair. Sure, thank you. Two things. I guess one question is, why is this even necessary if the governor's mandates are accurate and are scientific? Then why don't we just enforce the governor's mandates and not put forth a policy? And I also am just curious as to if this is so deadly and dangerous that we need to protect the staff from the public by making the public wear masks, and the ability of viral particles to plausibly stay suspended, especially with aeration and ventilation systems, the public will not be protected from the staff, even if they are behind a plexiglass shield. It kind of goes both ways. So it's kind of a little puzzling why we are not requiring the staff to wear masks at all times, if, as one commissioner said in the past, that it's just a piece of cloth. Maybe we should go full bore and make sure we're protecting the staff completely if masks are so effective, by requiring them to wear masks at all times, just so that we are doubly sure that we're protecting everybody.
Just a little history, if I could, on this. Is this did not start out, it was never meant to be a mask issue. This was addressing a clear OSHA issue of employees feeling safe at the workplace. They were vocal about the fact that they needed some more communication when there was an outbreak in order to feel safe. That is a clear and very obvious OSHA mandate that is given to us. That's how it started. Somehow it turned a corner and went into masks. I appreciate the safety committee taking it back and addressing to the extent that they could that. But this is just following OSHA mandates that we have to follow, that employees feel safe in their workplace. There was a communication issue that needed to be cemented and put in writing to make not just employees feel safe, but we were dealing with the administrator of the courts and some interfacing organizations that also wanted to see this. And so this is really a pretty simple, straightforward issue. This is not a mask issue. This is.
But Madam Chair, it does affect the public, and we are not just a staff organization. We are a public organization. We serve the public. We're elected by the public. We are paid the small salaries we get by the public, and all of the staff are paid by the public or tax dollars from the public in one sense or another. So I respectfully disagree that this is simple. We can protect the public and we can also serve them. And the policy needs to make sure that we're actually also taking care of the public as well. So I would respectfully say, if we are really protecting the staff, then some staff won't feel safe if somebody's walking around without a mask. After all, they got upset that Larry had a cup of coffee in his hand. So you can say it's not a mask issue, but this is addressing a mask issue. It's requiring that. So if masks are just a piece of cloth and it's not going to hurt the employee, then they should wear them at all times, no matter where they're at.
Okay. thank
Fair
you.
is fair.
Or, and then Commissioner Ames.
Thank you. Not to say, not my call to end the discussion, but I would like to call or to make a motion to approve it in the second year. But I gotta say, I don't think that it's okay for any commissioners to be interrupted. And I know sometimes that I might do that by accident, and I do apologize, but the past few meetings, it has got me leaving and actually feeling like I don't want to be here. And public service is something that I've always wanted to do. Went to school for it and everything, but just hearing the interrupting and the just completely misunderstanding of what the rules are and just being so indignant about that has got me not wanting to be here. And so I gotta ask, could you please, Isaiah, just like try to not interrupt and not.
You cannot speak for the commission.
Again, example, we gotta respect each other. So thank you, and I'd like to.
Madam Chair,
I'd like to make a motion to approve the safety guidelines as presented today.
Okay, did you want to add something?
Perfect, just want to call the vote.
Call the board, okay.
I'll second that.
Second, Joe?
Madam Chair, I move to amend the bylaws, move to amend this policy.
It says call to question. Let me check to see if we can change it after the call to a question.
Has it been voted to call the question though, Madam Chair? The bylaws require that, please.
So for that,
What's that?
because it says to call the question, that is to end the debate.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, when it's called.
If it's voted. So I've had to interrupt to stand for the bylaws multiple times, hundreds of times possibly in my career as a commissioner.
How would you like to amend it? Oh, I'm sorry.
It's been a call to end debate, and you can't amend that. So
I called the vote, and vote on that.
Okay, yes. So there was a call to end debate. There was a second. All in favor of calling the question. We're not voting on the question, calling the question.
It is debatable,
Okay,
but not amendable.
all right.
So Madam Chair, I guess I would just respectfully ask, why would we not want the commission to be able to possibly amend this policy, seeing as we represent the public? I would just ask the commissioners, we are taking multiple steps here, and the complaints of me having to interrupt multiple times, I've raised points of order and shown in the bylaws, and very rarely, if ever, has anyone been willing to open up the bylaws and see that almost all the time on those points of order, I've been correct. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but it behooves us. And so when people are ignored, when they raise legitimate points of order, you're going to have to sometimes interrupt to make sure you stand up for the people. So why would we rush to do this policy? It's been hashed about, but it's also been changed, as you know, because we asked for changes. And I think it will be appropriate for us to amend this and require that all staff wear it at all times, other than even when they're eating, to protect everybody, because it's not fair to just do this to the public. If this is really that dangerous, we need to protect the public from the staff and vice versa.
Any other debate on calling the question? Okay, All in favor, and we're not voting on the question, we're just voting on calling the question. I want everyone to be clear. All in favor of calling the question? Opposed? And a verbal.
Opposed, and I state this is highly irregular as usual, and I request the minutes to reflect that. Thank you.
Okay, and now we've called the question. Now we're actually voting on accepting the work of the safety committee in addressing the OSHA issue on their new policy. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second, Roland.
Thank you. And all in favor? Six opposed? And
Opposed, I request the minutes to reflect that I am opposed to this and that this is violating the rights of the public. If we're really protecting everybody, we should be protecting the public from the staff, from this deadly, scary virus as well. Thank you.
Went out to bid, we went with 6 different vendors. We received only one response, and we're just asking that we award the bid to Eagle Point Gun. It's for ammunition for a year. For the year, I'm sorry. And I'm good. Pretty good. It falls, I mean, I hate telling the rules, but there's no motion. But we discussed what we had budgeted and it falls in line with where we are. And in case of the concern about finances, was obviously approved through the budget process. They are required to have 2 training qualifications, and it will allow us the opportunity to do that.
I'll ask you something I should already know. I'm sorry, your line item there. I was trying to find the line item, and I know it can't be your firearms budget, but what is your line item for ammunition?
I'm gonna guess the ammunition's budget.
Fall under,
No, I didn't mean you have to call off the number, just, you remember where it falls
yeah, it's
under?
under training expenses.
Oh, okay, that's, I couldn't find a budget that would cover that amount. And then I started wondering, I know it's gonna be like 300 days before they deliver, is that right? Then I wondered if it's gonna go in next budget, but that makes sense if it goes under training. I would have never found it there. That's, okay, thank you. Is that typical, that it would take 300 days to deliver?
Nothing we're experiencing when dealing with vendors is typical over the past 2 years. I mean, we have another problem with a closing of bids tomorrow for vehicles, and there's some concerns there with availability and then who has it, the limited supply. But I don't know if this is a typical ammo bid. What isn't typical is when we go out to bid, usually we have new vendors that have opened up businesses that said, hey, can you include me in your next process, or send me whenever you go out to bid, and we get multiples back. To go out to half a dozen that are local and you only get one back, that's kind of telling.
Thank you. I knew dollar wise it didn't fit into firearms. I just couldn't figure out where it fit. Okay, thank you. Yes.
There is a very large ammo shortage going on. That doesn't
Oh.
surprise me in the,
Did not know that.
yeah.
Yeah, this almost hits 300 days, back to the day, this next year's budget.
I'm not surprised in the least by that.
Yeah, the treasurer will have to do that encumber thing on this probably. I didn't pay attention to that part. Billy pretty much handled this whole.
So do we need a motion?
You need a motion to
approve?
Okay. This is good enough.
Sorry, Roland.
No, that's what I went back, well, that's what I wanted to do.
Usually it starts out that way, but when you call, then I just started talking,
Okay.
that's typically what I do.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All in favor of accepting the sheriff's recommendation for the ammunition purchase?
It's to be awarded to Eagle Point Gun, the amount of $8,028.
I guess I thought the discussion was over. Was there any more discussion? Certainly, I don't want to shut it off. There's more questions.
Yeah, I guess I'll just, that's one thing. I see that where their address is, and, so really nobody in Maine was interested, and maybe they can't get this on.
I would say there's probably an interest, but when you're going out to bid, you're looking for the lowest price and it's competitive. And I don't know,
I don't have a long history of shopping in the gun market until last year, and I can tell you that things aren't available as easily. So I would think when they're looking at the for-profit rather than to strike a new business partner, that might have, you'll see if you, or I watch a lot of businesses on Facebook, social media, and they'll advertise something and 4 hours later, everything's when it comes to firearms and things associated. So I would think the lack of bid might be the lack of availability or knowing or not knowing what they may be able to get within a required timeframe, which might be another issue with why the 300 days thing is in there. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just want to make it clear that,
And we actually had we purchased new sidearms a few years back, and the vendor actually stopped by because he was visiting local establishments. And I talked to him briefly about firearms availability, and he was surprised that some of the people in the area actually had some items for sale because they're nowhere to be found.
yeah, my comment was just to make it clear that, we usually prefer local places, but this is
So do-
the person
so do
who
we.
responded.
So do we.
So is that part of,
Go right ahead.
so when we asked for bids, were the other vendors aware that they could bid but deliver in 300 days?
Yeah.
Because, I mean,
Well, we send
or
out,
did they think they had to come
Yeah,
on?
that's a good.
well, what we do is we send out to bid, here's what we're looking for. We didn't put a time frame on
We
it.
didn't put a time for it. We have our firearm instructors go through our inventories and figure out what we need for the year. And then we put that out for bid, and I tend to go to as many places as I can, particularly the local places. This particular company always seems to come through for us. It's one of the very few. Last year, they were the only vendor that actually bid as well. But we do it, I've gone as far as Bella's, to smaller gun shops, and he's the one that always bids and has always followed through. Some of these dealers can't get some of the ammunition that they're looking for as well.
But are they aware that they could deliver 300 days?
We don't put perimeters.
We didn't put a time frame on the RFP that we put out. I'm assuming that's because of the shortage nationwide.
So it wasn't declared other than this is what we need, how much will you sell it for, to everybody we sent it to. This business not only responded to it, but responded to it with a timeline where nobody responded, nobody called for clarification or asked questions, where in the reverse, we went out for car bids recently, and the deadline's tomorrow at 2, where we've heard from pretty much everybody. So in this thing, I think this business has done business with us historically where others might not be interested. And it's a large quantity for a lot of the smaller dealers, and they're having inventory issues because there's a large demand right now.
Madam Chair,
Brian's comments that, it's a good price. But I just want to know that we told the other people, maybe they could give us a good price to do main business. Is all I'm saying.
For
If they do it
clarification,
all.
I buy ammo frequently. Most places, you're not allowed more than 2 boxes around here.
Well,
So they're just, everyone's just out. No one's able to get all the full orders. Sadly.
Commissioner Larry?
Sheriff, thank you, Madam Chair. Sheriff Sampson, just a question. How much different is this from last year's amount, cost wise and volume wise?
Last year, we'd asked for more. We had to cut it down because it's all within the budget, but otherwise it's within budget from last year, very comparable.
Okay, so we're not going much higher at least.
Well, we're within budget and the prices are comparable. We're getting the everything that we need over the year.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Medora?
Thank you. I don't want to belabor it much. This sounds pretty reasonable. But you guys talk about volume, and there's a lot of bullets here. How would you rate that the volume here in comparison to what you need? Like, is this like your minimal viable product to get your training
We're
done,
probably
or-
we're going with as needed, not much waste, not any over the top. There's always a need with any kind of training of something, whether it's driving a vehicle, you'd like more training available, whether it's firearms, top and sidearms, your rifles, your shotguns, you'd like to have more opportunities for training. While we do a lot of practical exercises, for the most part, we do the qualification required to twice a year. We do the night shooting. I think we have one day of practical shooting tied in with that. So we don't go over the top. It's an area that you'd like to expand, but right now certainly wouldn't be the time. And when you have availability issues, the cost of ammunition is higher than that, although it's not really reflected in the bid. So when we're looking at the amount of needs we have as an agency, and you're trying to streamline a budget so it's kind of predictable, you factor in the must-haves. And although training is very important for us, and we've increased the line over the years, up until a few years ago where it's kind of stabilized, training as it relates to firearms, I'm sure the instructors would advocate for more range time. But right now, we're just having what we need to meet the standard and a little bit extra for practical, as well as we do the thing with the, I'll call it paintball guns. We do exercises like that as well. That answer your question?
Absolutely.
Okay, there's no other discussion. We have a motion and we have a second. All in favor of, you're in support of the sheriff's recommendation on the ammunition bid. Opposed? And a vote.
Opposed.
That is 6-1. And now you want to move on to the reserve?
Yeah, if you guys want to move on to the reserve pay, we meant to do this last year, but something came up last year that kind of distorted everything, so it kind of fell by the wayside. We are looking to increase the reserve pay. It's been probably 5 years or so. We waited for contract things with the full-time employees to get situated, with some structure there. And when we were just recently looking at hire for reserves for the jail, reserve corrections officers, we realized we had overlooked the adjustments to the reserve pay scale over the past year or so. And there's a couple of factors. We delayed because we wanted to get their earnings higher, because we went through a portion of time 2 years ago where the reserve wages and the full-time wages as far as starting employees was so similar. We had full-time employees that wanted to control their own schedule looking to resign, and they would get part-time wages, but the schedule flexibility is a lot better. And they could still be under family health care because they were under 26 years old, and there was no consideration for vacation time or means retirement, things of that nature. So being conscious of everything, as well as needing to attract employees, now while we're looking to hire, we felt was the actual appropriate time to request to increase the starting wage, as you see here. And it keeps, it'll be, I think, almost $2 an hour less than what our full-time employees start at. And we're looking to hire beginning of May, because there's an academy at the end of May, which would work out good for traditional college students, things of that nature. Currently, it won't affect the budget lines because we don't typically spend the reserve wages. What we end up doing is rolling it over into overtime. We've eliminated reserves and dispatch because it just wasn't, with the EMS and all that stuff, it wasn't practical to keep up training certifications and the skills labs without the repetition. We eliminated reserves. Actually, that was before I came in our civil division. And anyway, currently we only have reserves predominantly in the jail, and patrol will probably be eliminating our reserves next year. So it doesn't affect the budget line. We're just hoping to attract more, because obviously it's cheaper to pay reserves a better wage than it is to have full-timers working more time and a half. I think that answers everything involved. It is a $2 hike, but $2 hike that should have been probably addressed last year and year before.
I saw your ad for reserve officers. I thought you really, the way you worded it, is trying to draw in young people, out of high school. I thought you did a good job there.
That's why I'm the sheriff.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Kelly, is there anything, if you took that to the workforce board, would there be potential employees looking for employees for reserves?
Absolutely, I think that's, you know, they get a great deal of, you know, traffic, you know, in the career center. And I believe that, you know, it would attract a great deal of attention.
Historically, people used to start out as reserves, and then when full-time openings came up, they'd be offered the jobs first. And it, you know, you'd hire 5 reserves, 2 would want to be full-time, some would stay reserved for a number of years, so it worked out great for everybody. And it built up a hiring pool. When they switched the academy to this 5-week deal, and they took the in-service training away from us in the initial 2 weeks, we used to be able to train people 2 weeks here, let them work, and within a year had to send them away for another 2 weeks. When they changed that, it lowered our applicants, you know, where people aren't willing so much to try it. That's why it tends to, you know, we've had success with college students. We've had success with people that are retired but looking to do things. But it's not like somebody that works full-time at VIW that's willing to pick up a shift or 2 a month. And I think whether you're talking, you know, the smaller fire departments or, you know, reserve police officers, reserve corrections officers, there's just not that level of interest anymore beyond people's full-time employment. It's something we've noticed over the past couple of years. But the training requirements are a lot more than they used to be as well.
Commissioner Larry?
thank you. I guess, what is the starting pay then? If you're saying this is so low, what is the starting pay for somebody starting out?
Well, currently it's $13 an hour.
Okay. And how often are they required to work to maintain that? And that's with benefits, I assume, insurance, Main State Retirement?
No, nothing.
Okay.
No benefit. It's per diem. We require, but have also, because of schooling, we ask that they work 2 shifts a month, as long as we see this on attempt to do that. You know, at times, people have gone away for studies or wanted more time to study during seasons. We respect that, but generally, we get the bulk of the return on our investment during summer, traditional vacations, depending on what schools they attend. Like, we've hired people at St. Joe's College. They see we're in a bind, they'll come up for the weekend to work a shift. We've had interest from people with Husson and in law enforcement programs or CMCC. So it's a good resume builder for them, and it's a good opportunity for us, because when they're available is our peak vacation time. And because there's so many schools that every once in a while, when we're in a pinch, one of them will make a trip up on Saturday night to work a shift out.
Great opportunity for them.
Yeah.
Commissioner Madore?
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking to make a motion to approve the sheriff's request to, as written, the $2 an hour increase for the beginning and after training, also $2 an hour.
Okay.
I do have a question. Well,
Okay, go ahead.
yeah, thank you. How many reserves do we have? You said you want to hire like 5. How many do we have now, and what will we have when we hire 5?
Currently, we have 2 in the jail, 1 in the jail. And we've got 1 that's active on the road, but he keeps telling us he's looking for a reason to retire. And then we have 1 that he's actually an instructor at CMCC that is active selectively. On the patrol side, it's really going by the wayside, so next year we'll be eliminating that. On the jail side, just one of these. Okay, we have 1 full-time employee that just resigned but stayed on reserve status. And traditionally, those employees go to another job or schooling. I think that's what he's doing. They maintain to see if the grass is greener, things like that. And the other one moved back to the state. He now works for Auburn PD, but he still comes in from time to time, or he's still on our list. Sometimes after 6 months to a year, they taper down. So we have 2 that are active, 2 that are on the list. And we'll see how that goes. And then on the patrol side, we have 1 that's active, 1 that's active sometimes. And then we have 2 additional reserves, but they pretty much just help out with firearms training and special details like drug take back, things like that. They don't work shifts, they're retired police officers.
So
Madam Chair.
We've talked about reserves quite a few times. And I feel like maybe I'm having some deja vu about it, but I'm not going to go over, some of what we talked about before. But it seems like they are really helpful in the jail, one is that the financial part of it, they don't have benefits, right? They're just on demand, part-time employees. I hear you want to do 5. Is this what you're asking for? Do you think this is competitive enough to get who you want, to get them to stay?
I think it's competitive for the field and it keeps us in line and safe from what we experienced a couple of years ago where you have younger staff that there's enough separation between your full-time employees and your part-time wages to give people second thoughts about going to be part-time status. Because sometimes when people go full-time to part-time, you lose them over time. I think it's competitive in the market, for what they're doing. And like you said, there's no benefits. The biggest cost is the training in uniforms, but we get those back. And I say 5, that's optimistic. But if we get 5, that would be great. It used to be in the jail, the goal was always 10 on hand. That's really not practical anymore, but 5 would be manageable. But we'll see how it goes. It's not like we're gonna say no, we're gonna put people through the traditional hiring background checks and things of that nature. We're hoping for 5, to be honest with you.
Commissioner Larry?
Sure. Madam Chair, I move to amend that to increase of $1 per hour instead, seeing as we're dealing with massive budget issues and concerns going into the future.
Okay, is there a motion to that amendment? Is there a second to that motion to amend? Hearing no second, we will go back to the original motion. Any other discussion? Okay, let's take
Is there a
vote.
second
No, there was no second. No, sir.
for the original motion?
Brian Ames, Commissioner Ames,
Okay, thank you.
is that?
Oh, don't be modest now.
All right, all in favor of the sheriff's proposal? Opposed?
Opposed?
And that is 6-1. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, Sheriff.
And discussion items.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Larry?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've asked and I've heard it asked, but has the public been allowed to attend this meeting, at least if they wore masks or face shields? I see no public here. I don't know if they're down in another room. And also, were they required to go through metal detectors? It's concerning to me because we voted to allow the public in. So I'm just trying to understand, were they turned away at the door because of a metal detector, or what? There's 2 questions and they still have not been answered. So has the public been given the opportunity to come in if they wore a face shield or wore a mask? And
Actually,
were they required to go through a metal detector, Madam Chair?
the administrator, there was no metal detector this evening. The administrator had sent out in advance a written explanation of space constraints and how we were going to handle that. And then, of course, because we didn't have enough space for the public, we had the alternative way of attending the meeting by Zoom. I'll let the administrator talk for himself.
Was that, Madam Chair, was that posted for the public to be aware of? That's because that was not what the commission voted, and the administrator does not get to overrule the commission. We voted as a commission to allow the public. So I'm concerned why that did not occur.
Okay, I've asked the administrator and I have recognized him to go ahead and give the explanation.
Apparently, you missed part of the material that was sent to you, because the material that was sent explained the fact that we're also part of the orders that we're under now that we've become famous, particularly, is that not only do we have to wear masks, but we also have to use the space that's allotted. And the space that's allotted, when you do the calculations, comes to about 15 people in the room. And with the staff that was required to be here and the commissioners, that led to 14 people. And so therefore, the public wasn't allowed in because that would have been too many in a room.
Okay, other discussion items.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Larry?
I just would ask, how much is the value of the area that we allow the court and the state to use for $1 per year, I think that valuation is quite high. So I think we should look as a commission into charging for that the full retail or real estate value of that. If the state is going to treat us and especially our taxpayers in such a manner, and now they're not even able to be seen, we've shut them down off of Zoom from being seen. It's very easy to ignore people's concerns and ignore when you don't even get to see them face to face or even via Zoom. So I guess I think we should really, as a commission, look at charging the state the full retail value, especially given the fact that they have forced upon us inmates that have sat there for far longer than they ever should have. And even I believe we've been pushing that issue as well. So I think we should be charging the full amount. It's not appropriate to the taxpayer to be taking this on the chin twice.
Discussion items, yes.
Thank you. I wish, do we proceed, John Michael, coming back? Please just
I can hear him up top.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna talk a little bit about this previously, but I'm interested in kind of doing a bit, hearing some feedback about what I had mentioned in previous meetings. I was proposing that we, I know we didn't want to kind of talk about things outside of our realm, but I do feel like, our inmates are something that is in our realm. And one of our number one statutory responsibilities is the health and safety of our inmates. And so I am curious if, personally, I feel like we should try to ask the governor or the administration to prioritize the inmates in the phases of the vaccine rollout. And I got a lot of reasons for why, and I have written something up, but I'm not going to go over them right now. And I'm curious if anyone would be interested in entertaining, something on the agenda about that. And we got about this backlog for 3 years in the justice system, and I feel like there are other issues in the jail, and we have our staff, and their health and safety is their responsibility. And I think there's a lot of financial considerations too. Just one hospitalization would cost us, $10,000 minimum. We got to babysit them in the hospital and with a corrections officer, and not to mention we have to pay their medical bills. So I think there's a lot of reasons for why. In part, I hear, I understand the phases being out of our, realm, but I think it's important also that we do talk about prioritizing the health and safety of our inmates. And one thing that I've seen recently is it does look like the governor and the administration is somewhat seemingly going to be pivoting the rollout plan to accommodate teachers, and I wouldn't want our inmates to get before the teachers, but I do feel like they should be on the list and prioritized, somewhere on the list. I'm not, I don't want to say when, because I don't think that's my role, but I do think, asking the administration to prioritize them is important. So that's what I'm looking to bring up for a discussion.
Madam Chair, I just want to make sure we're not going to require the inmates to receive a injection. It's not even a vaccine at this point. That goes against their concerns. Yes, it might cost us some money if someone gets sick, but if we start forcing inmates to get a vaccine or an injection, especially since this has been rolled out so rapidly, we could be looking at high dollar lawsuits on the other side as well. That is a grave concern. We also have 70% pretrial in general. That's something that's been around for a long, long time. Please don't make that hand motion, sir. And this is very, very concerning that we're discussing this, and all it takes is the governor saying that it has to happen. That's why we should have stopped this with a resolution to begin with. But this is we're talking about making people take treatment. And I'm very, very concerned and would like to see the commission make a commitment that we will not require inmates or staff to get a vaccine or an injection. That's not our realm, that's their bodies. And we need to start standing up for their freedoms. I would dare say, if we had a governor that was discriminating against one group of people or another and declared a state of emergency, and the legislature let them basically have free reign, we would probably feel compelled as a commission to stand up against it. So I'm concerned that now, if the governor writes something, we'll toe the line. We need to protect their rights as well. And I'm very concerned that there's this push for the vaccination or injection of inmates. This has to be up to them, and it has to be not only up to them, but they should not be induced or coerced or rewarded for getting it or not getting it.
Because that was never brought up, but go ahead, Commissioner Carr.
In response to that, I would say that we cannot force the inmates to eat their meals, let alone receive a vaccination. So I believe that concern is unfounded. We can't force them.
Can we force the public to do things that are unlawful and unconstitutional? We've done that as a commission in a large degree.
Get to some other commissioners, please.
No, nothing.
Nothing, okay. I do, in all disclosure, Commissioner Medord asked for this to be on the agenda, and I put it off a meeting only because I knew we had a few items that had to be voted on, and I just wasn't sure what the time frame would be. And so, would you like this on the agenda? I want you to know I didn't ignore it. I actually had a lengthy conversation with Dr. Dora Mills, and she gave her reasoning of why the inmates were not put up ahead of the line, and I'd love to have an opportunity to share that with you sometime, but maybe, are you still wanting that on the next agenda, or?
I think I'm interested in us talking about it a little bit more.
Okay.
Before going here. You know, and I really appreciate what you said, Commissioner Kelly, because, you know, that's not what I'm proposing. And I'm not, you know, I don't think we should be dictating, you know, where in line these people should fall. But, you know, it's our responsibility for health and safety. And I think there's a lot of reasons, a lot of compelling reasons and why they should be prioritized. And I'm not saying they should be for teachers or people over 60, but I'm saying it should be on the list. And it's so, yeah. So I'm interested in hearing other people's thoughts on that.
Madam Chair, could we put this as a public hearing then?
Would you please stop?
Aye.
Poirier,
I'm just kind of asking a question because
go ahead.
if Commissioner Medora is saying he wants it on the future agenda item, that's all we're discussing tonight. We don't need to discuss the pros and cons of it. We're just saying he wants to put it on the agenda. When we have it on the agenda, we can start having this debate. But until we have it on the agenda, I somehow don't understand why we're even debating.
So
I'm confused.
I'm just kind of trying to just, you know, it's a discussion item. So, you know, whether people are for or against it, I'm happy to hear that too, because I don't want to keep bringing it up if there's no interest. So that's kind of what I'm trying to get at.
Well, you had brought it up for the agenda, so certainly, you know, it could be put on the agenda next week, if that's what you, or next meeting.
Yeah. I mean,
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Ames or Commissioner Michaels.
Yeah, I'd like
We'll talk about it when we're done. I'm open to having a conversation.
All right, we'll put it on a future agenda item.
Yeah,
And like it wasn't on this one, I hope you understand, I knew we had things that had to have a vote, and I just wasn't sure how it was going to work, and so, all right, we'll wait that, we'll put that next issue for. a future
Madam
agenda
Chair.
item.
I request you put that as a hearing, a public hearing to allow the public to speak uninhibited, seeing as we've had a bit of a trend lately to really restrict the public's ability to speak, and they ought to be able to show their faces. It's important that if the public is speaking, we can see their faces. If somebody puts up a sign that's inappropriate, they should be warned. That would be the proper procedure following the bylaws, and that they wouldn't be immediately muted, but be warned. And if after multiple warnings, they could then be ejected from the meeting using the bylaws, which is what the bylaws basically allow. So I think we need to make sure we allow ourselves to see the public's face And because it's so much easier to ignore people when we're just hearing their voice and not actually seeing their faces. That was so powerful when people spoke up on February 3rd, and we heard the other side of the story that has not been brought up for almost a year now.
Other discussion items?
I have another,
Okay, let me make sure there's no one else before I recognize you second time. Okay, go ahead.
what was I thinking? Oh, yes, so I wanted to ask this about the POA, thing. And when I heard Commissioner Ames talk about some of the horrendous emails he received, it kind of even more piqued my interest. I was kind of interested in seeing the cataloging of the public comment that we had, and I don't necessarily want to see like a lot of time spent on it, because, you know, there's not a whole lot of, you know, there's no outcome to it. But I was really, that was really bothersome to hear, so I really got intrigued, because everything I received was very, you know, kind of different than that. Now, Larry, did you guys kind of catalog some of that, or where does that kind of stand?
I went through and I've taken the ones that we got that we, I think passed on all of them to you. I may have missed a couple, but anyway, and have set those aside, you know, in its own folder. But the ones that went directly to the commissioners, obviously, I don't have. And,
Okay, so.
Happy to forward you.
Sure, yeah, send me your favor. But the next thing, okay, so 2 meetings ago, I felt like we were a bit blindsided by something that the sheriff said. And, you know, he said basically that he didn't agree with the bond proposal going forward. And so he said some about that. And I don't know, I guess I want to see kind of what we're gonna do moving forward to try to kind of reconcile the different pieces of the house here, because, you know, I appreciate your letter, Larry, that you shared with us. And so, but I don't know, I just, you know, so I just kind of want to talk about, well, what, you know, what are we gonna do to reconcile this? They're like, do we want to go forward with the plan and should we talk about, you know, the bond proposal more? Maybe we should get the architect here. You know, what do we want to do to move this forward? I think we all recognize that we have capital needs. But we also can recognize that we have a differing opinion about, you know, what we need moving forward. And I think we all can also agree that the basement is pretty wretched. So I don't know, I just kind of wanted to talk about what we're gonna do.
couple of things or comments that I would make is that there are a couple of you that haven't had the tour of the basement. The other thing is that we do need to, I think we need a workshop, probably at the next meeting. It's just, I don't see a great number of things on the agenda. So I think there does need to be some discussion, and there needs to be another tour of that basement just to, so that we can see what we're looking at.
Sure,
Quite
Madam
frankly,
Chair. Oh, sorry,
The administrator still talking, please?
I didn't hear that. I apologize, Madam Chair. He had paused, so I'd spoken up. Thank you.
The sheriff and I have a disagreement as to, and I'm not sure that it is a disagreement. I think he is concerned that, you know, once they're there, they'll be there for the next 50 years, and maybe outgrow it and still do it. But my concern is that if we don't do something down there, they'll be here 6 years from now in the same situation they are now. And I'm concerned about that, and I think that we can look at some of the other options and some other opportunities once we've got that fixed, and at least so that they're in an environment that's hospitable to them. So
To that point, would, anyone be agreeable to have a workshop next meeting?
Madam Chair,
Providing, no big agenda items come that are lengthy in time.
Madam Chair, Madam Chair, I've been ignored for quite a while now, Madam Chair. I should have been allowed to speak after commission, administrator posts, as it is discussion items, commissioners only. So I guess I would say if we're going to be spending this kind of money into the million, we should give the public a video tour of the building, especially since they've been shut out. We can keep anything that's confidential, security issues, not public just for the sake of staff and law enforcement security. But the public has a right to know what kind of money, if we're spending this kind of money or asking them to authorize it, we should show them exactly what they're looking at, and not just the worst spots, but the regular spots too. And so I think we should be doing that. And a workshop also shuts off public comment unless it's so decided to allow them to speak. And given the history of the past multiple meetings, I do not have any comfort level in doing that as a workshop. We could always do that later at this point, especially given the fact that we're talking about the sheriff not wanting to spend this kind of money and having a different approach. I think it would be good for the public to be able to participate in every way, shape, and form. We've set a huge different trend now where we've basically pushed the public out. And I'm very deeply concerned, and the governor can say whatever she wants, but sooner or later, constitutionally, she's already crossed multiple lines. And we, as a commission, I can't speak for the commission, but I can speak to the commission. We as a commission need to stand up for the rights of our people to be able to have a representative government. That's legislative. I don't care about what Lewiston or Auburn or any of the other cities or towns or Maine Municipal Association is doing. We need to make sure we allow the public the opportunity to speak and make their voice heard. That's how we keep things in a proper manner. We don't get people all frustrated and angry.
Commissioner Poirier.
I will not be able to attend the meeting in person for the next meeting.
Okay.
So, I mean, you can still have the workshop, but I just want you to know that.
Yeah, if we can have as many, we're gonna be
Yeah,
passing.
all right, conflicting.
I'm sorry, I forgot that you told me that too, and
Yeah,
Two meetings.
I'll be zooming in, for the meeting, but I just won't be physically present.
And this is off in the distance a little bit, with 2 meetings from now, if anybody object to a workshop meeting, no. It'd be great if you could be here for it and go downstairs and take a look and.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, well, I
I'd
can
love for you to be here.
visit ahead of time.
Okay, Commissioner Bedore.
Yeah, well, thoughts on the process going forward. I think we had some huge things ahead of us. And this, I think, is one small piece of the huge capital challenges going forward. People have gotten a chance to talk to the sheriff about the whole other side of the house and what it's like over there. But, we get kind of an impending crisis. We've had chronic overcrowding for a long time. And, there was, even that big sort of plan that Harriman and Associates put together about a decade ago, it doesn't, from my recollection, doesn't really even talk about that part of the house, which is huge. And so right now, we gotta kind of be able to talk about ourselves. This is not a time for the public, for us to try to persuade the public to support what we want, because we don't know what we want, right? We gotta figure out what we want. And so right now, it's not like we need experts. We need to think about it. We need to plan. We need to be careful, because if we were to improve the basement, it seems like maybe we kind of need it now, but say we approve this basement plan, the voters approve it. It seems like there's going to be a very short window to when we're going to need a larger capital investment for the jail. So I think the sheriff's point, and I'm not saying that this, proposal is wrong, but I think the sheriff's point is to some extent that there's a lot of things at stake, and we may not get many opportunities to bring this kind of thing to the public to fix them. So, as we move forward, I think one of the things we should think about is maybe involving an expert who is, like Harriman or some other, firm that is really involved with working with the public and kind of seeing what the needs are. Because I think for us, it's really hard to see what the needs are. And and I know the sheriff has his own perspective of, and I think maybe part of it is kind of what you mentioned, Larry, which is a different building. And personally, I find it really difficult to digest. I agree. I can't really get, I'm not there to see that. I can't get on board, but we have his opinion and we have your opinions and we have the clear needs. There's some clear needs. And so I think we need to kind of think about whether we should be involving some other people in what we need. Because I don't think it's enough, even when we're trying to justify what we need to the public, whether it's this or these other things. I think we need some other experts involved to help justify to the public and to ourselves about it. Because, I see the price tags on some of this. We're talking about some investments that are like the most expensive things to build. They're the most expensive things to build. And we can't be doing this step, especially when we're going to be paying interest on this. And we need what we need. We don't need anything more than we need. So we need to just be, patient and talk about it. Because else I want to do right by the public, and I think that's how we're going to do it. And so I'm curious if, what our, budget line is for professional services. I know we barely touched it in the past. So I'm curious if, maybe in a few weeks, maybe we can, we'll talk about this thing, but maybe we should also talk about, what money do we have for professional services to try to see, who we can get involved that can try to help us put it all together.
Yeah.
Part of the other problem that we have right at this moment too is the fact that it's not certain that there's going to be an election this fall. The CMP corridor, they've gotten their signatures and so on. However, that's going to end up in court. In my conversation with Secretary of State's office, that there's no guarantee that that's going to make it to the election date. And the other part, which would be bond issues by the legislature, they haven't done anything yet, so we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But so right now, that's kind of up in the air.
Okay, so obviously we have a lot of work to do. There's no other discussion items. We'll move on to future agenda. What I am asking to be on the next agenda is, I'm not sure, the other day Sandy did not have all the FOA training back and our days are clicking away on that. So at the next meeting, I'd like to carve out a little time at the end of the meeting. If you don't have your FOA done at that time, we'll have the paperwork here for you.
Yeah.
You can read it through, you can sign it, I'll collect it at the end of the meeting, and then it'll be a nice sealed package for Sandy. That's sort of part of the. Yeah, and that's easy to forget about. So we'll have that in the packet for you at the next meeting. It shouldn't take more than 10 minutes just to read through it, answer questions, sign off on it, and then we'll know it's done. That's right, it's done. And then also for the future agenda items, we had Commissioner Medors issue any other future agenda items.
Sure, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Larry?
Policy for allowing the public to speak at commissioner meetings. I think we need to address that significantly. So I request that that be added to the commissioners meeting agenda. And also a public hearing to allow the public to speak regarding the bond issue. Because hiring experts to reach out to the public is not the way to find out what the public, where we're their representatives. So it'd be good for us to actually hear from the public. So both of those items, please.
Part of the process, so that will happen. It doesn't happen at the beginning, but it is definitely part of the process.
But per the bylaws, Madam Chair, point of order, an agenda item request that does have to be added eventually. It doesn't have to be added immediately, but within, I would say, a reasonable amount of time, maybe 2 meetings at max. And
What she's saying, Commissioner, is that a public hearing is a process that would happen before any voting takes place on the bond. So that.
But at that point, it's a little too late to change it. That the reasoning will be that we don't have time to change it. We've got this engineering package all written up. We spent all this money. So maybe you don't call it a public hearing, but I would respectfully request that the chair add to the agenda in the next meeting or two, please, that we allow the public to speak to a specific agenda item of this bond issue, because the public has a right to speak, and that's getting really, really trampled on lately. Thank you.
Isaiah, you're asking people to talk about bond issues that we don't really have written. And it's kind of hard to, I don't think we want to start taking people through the building or either video wise and have somebody say, oh, you should fix that piece of piping. I think when we were voted in, we were asked to take the position of putting that type of information together. Once that information is together, I agree with you, the public should have an opportunity to understand what we put together. But while we're compiling our facts, our understanding of the nature of what we're talking about, public discussion doesn't quite make sense, because if we're trying to fix the jail with a committee of 100,000 people, it's not gonna happen. I mean, I think we need to get something, at least a framework put together before we start asking for input. I mean, building something by committee that is exponential, when you say invite everybody in the county to participate, doesn't work, at least not in my experience.
The public should at least have an opportunity to see that, because we are actually debating an agenda item at this moment, but the public should have an opportunity to see, exactly how bad the foundation is or the areas. And obviously, it's puzzling to see that we just don't want the public involved anymore. I'm concerned about that. That's the impression that's really getting out there. And it's up to the public to tell us whether they feel this is even justified or not. Once I've seen this, Commissioner Poirier, in the past 4 years, that there tends to be a tendency of, don't discuss it. The commissioner shouldn't discuss it right now because it's all being processed in the back end. And then when we receive it, oh, it's too late to vote on this. We can't amend this because it's already done and it's a done deal. So it's I don't like saying that, but that's what I've seen in the past almost 4 years. And it's highly inappropriate, and it's not fair to the commissioners, myself as a commissioner, or the taxpayer. And the ones that really get burnt on this whole way of doing things is the taxpayer. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I don't know, I had a discussion a while back with, at a social event when we had those. And I talked to the individual who is kind of the person who's been essentially, took Ryan Dench's spot in relationship to Androscoggin County. And I kind of talked to her maybe about coming in and saying hello to us. I think that, we kind of really took a 180 on involving law experts in our, what we do. And I'm not saying that we got to change that, but I think it would kind of be beneficial for us to maybe just, she's not going to charge us for it, but just have her come in and say hi and tell her who she is and that she exists. And does anyone have any interest in that?
Who are you referring to?
Amy, yeah, I'm blanking on her last name.
What did she do?
She's an attorney. She works at Skelton King Rabbit, who's the firm that Anscombe County has kind of preferred, you could say, for decades, I think. And, you know, in the past, lawyer Brian Dench had a very, very heavy role in Anscombe County, like more than you would ever imagine. I'm not saying we should, you know, change what we're doing, but I just think that we could involve some experts in our decision making, especially, you know, when we have questions of rules and whatnot. And I don't want to bother her or spend much money on it, but she expressed to me that she would be willing to come in and not charge us and just kind of introduce herself and just kind of start a dialogue.
Absolutely.
Are you okay if that's 2 meetings from now?
Yeah, whenever.
Because we're-
I think it was like a year and a half ago that I talked to her, so
Yeah,
I'm sure she still wanted to do it.
that would be an executive session.
Oh, yeah, either or.
Okay, very good. Okay, motion to adjourn.
So.
So second.
And all in favor? Opposed?
Opposed?
Okay, 6-1.